Hey y'all, you're listening to Diagnosing Sitcoms and Movies, the DSM podcast. We help make mental health more comfortable by using Black movies and shows we know and love and culture to remove stigma. So join our convo with your host, Courtney Copeland, licensed mental health counselor.
And Dr. B, licensed professional counselor.
What's poppin', everybody? Today we have a very special treat. I am super excited. We have our very first guest. Woo woo! Exciting.
Did the same.
So we have joining us an amazing mental health mind, somebody who we have known for a while, who is an overall just great individual, beautiful Black woman, super intelligent and knowledgeable about everything Black. We love her. Please welcome Miss Jovan Shumpert. Jovan, tell them a little about yourself, girl.
Hey, thank you for that wonderful opening. I'm like, damn, I'm all those things.
Yeah, she forgot dope. She forgot dope AF, but I'll let it fly.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Jovan Shumpert. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Indiana. I currently work as a behavioral health therapist with a local hospital agency. And then I also recently started my private practice called Becoming Growing Learning LLC. Shameless plug. But, we're here.
Plug away.
So, I recently started that. I'm really excited about it. I specialize, I would say, in working with late teens through early adulthood. I do have some college campus experience as a therapist. And then in my current role, I work with youth. So I work with anything or anyone between the ages of 3 and 18. So you can imagine just how different those age groups are developmentally. But my favorite are the ones that are considered teenagers that are able to process and things like that. But that's me.
Look at that well-rounded resume. You better go ahead, girl.
Right?
Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to say I'm an Aggie.
Aggie pride.
Aggie pride. Yes.
Okay, so I want to ask you guys, let's start off quotables. What is your favorite quote from the show? And while you think, go ahead, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to say that my favorite, even though it happened very early in the show, is maybe it's dry as hell. Maybe it really smells broken pussy.
Ooh.
Maybe it's had enough broken pussy. I just wanted to share that with y'all.
Wow. She's starting early.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
My gosh.
I can't think about any direct quotes, but some of my, I guess, favorite parts or just parts that had me clutching my pearls was, I think it was at Tiffany's baby shower, maybe after Tiffany had the baby, that it was after she had the baby, that Molly was asking Issa, why is she so messy and why does she want, why does she love drama, things like that. So it was just a moment that I clutched my pearls a little bit because it was just you are the definition of messy.
Girl,
and we saw in this latest season that Issa was actually the mature one, that she was, coming into her own. She had her glow up and she was actually attempting to be very mature. So it was just kind of messed up that her friend chose that moment to kind of try to bring her down a peg.
She said, life ain't always got to be this messy, girl. And I imagine that would be the moment in which you clutched the pearls.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I'm quiet over here low key because I'm trying to find the exact words for the quote because I could never get quotables right unless I write them down or because I just cannot remember. I mean, obviously we had a whole moment before this recording about my memory. So anyway, my favorite quotable is from when I believe this is season 2 and she starts working as a manager in the apartment complex. And that little boy, her and Nathaniel, I think she took him to this, one of the famous LA taco joints. and the little boy come knocking on the door. So Issa opens the door and he was like, what y'all doing? Eating tacos and kissing or some crazy shit. It was just like, that's why I'm like, man, Rosie, you just ruined it. You set the whole story and then you can't even get the quotable right. Close book. We're done.
Yeah, I'm not as good with shows unless I've seen it multiple times.
Right.
But with movies, I can quote those like nobody's business. But shows, it's a little bit harder for me.
You know, that's why you should be another host on the show. You might consider it.
And, you know, no shade, but Jovan, you picked the show. So, you know, we just gonna throw that out there. But anyway, you don't know what we're talking.
That was shade. Okay, yes, I did pick the show. I can give you a good synopsis of the show, but as far as like direct quotes, that is not my thing. That is not my thing.
That's hard.
Okay, for everyone who does not know from our terrible renditions of quotables, but we are talking about the amazing show Insecure, created by the wonderful and very talented Issa Rae, starring Yvonne Orji, Jay Ellis, Natasha Rothwell, Mendocillos, and a cast of other beautiful Black and brown people. Those are just, you know, the mainstays of the entire series. So we have to name those people. But yes, this show this was the end of its 4th season 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So it just ended for us. And so this is perfect timing actually to talk about the show, because I don't know about everyone else, but I am still in shock, processing, recovering from the news of the last episode with Condoleezza Rice. I'm going to call her all different types of different condiments. She's going to be everything. During this episode, but yes, the news of her being with child. Before we even dive into each and every character, just
spoiler alert.
That
was late.
Real early.
That was late.
Real early. We're holding no punches. We're discussing everything. So if you haven't watched it, what are you doing with your life? Catch up.
Very true.
So how do you guys feel about that news before we even talk about the individual characters? Just the impact.
I saw it coming. I was upset by the news. I saw it coming, though, because Condola, I had to truly think about her name. That's why I paused, because everybody has been playing with her name. But Condola basically let it be known that she was not looking for anything serious after, you know, going through a divorce and things like that. But she was actually kind of forced to tell him after the drunk friend at the party let Lawrence in on that little secret. And she, you know, let it be known that he's her little plaything. You know, they just cuddy buddies and that's it. And you could tell that he was really hurt by that and all of that because he thought it was going to be something more. And so the fact that when we watched that beautiful episode, and what's Kelly's real name again? Natasha
Rothwell, I believe.
Natasha Rothwell. Her episode was my absolute favorite. And that's the one where we saw Issa and Lawrence having this like very mature but awkward cutesy, you know, reunion. And it was just like, dang, why won't Condola just let us live in this moment? And so it was just like, okay, she's kind of pressed right now to talk to him. What else is there to talk about? So after she's already let it be known that she does not really want anything from him other than, you know, them to kind of have fun together, have sex, and they kind of broke up. I put that in air quotes. I know you guys can't see that. But but yeah, after they broke up, it's just kind of like, what else is there to talk about other than a pregnancy? And so, I was upset by it. I mean, but, you know, adult shit, it happens. You know, that's why you got to wrap it up, you know. Control it up, do something.
Right. I was so annoyed by that because, I mean, come on, let's be real now. Like, y'all wasn't at least trying not to at least get pregnant. Like, I mean, forget the fact that y'all wasn't protecting yourselves against STDs, because, you know, I can get on my soapbox all day about STDs and HIV and the need for condom use. But to me, it was just like, damn, girl, like, you ain't on no type of nobody's birth control.
Especially knowing that it wasn't serious. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you with your man and that's what y'all do and y'all say, you know, whatever happens, happens, cool.
But you just out here letting her hang loose able to get pregnant by anybody. And bam. But I thought what was going to happen, he was going to leave. He was going to move to LA. I thought that's what was going to happen.
Well, San Francisco.
I mean, not San Francisco, because they in LA. I need to wake up. Somebody got coffee.
But I will, in Crayola's defense, Lawrence did say, I thought we were being careful.
Yeah,
so they didn't speak to what form of contraceptive they were using, but it does sound like there was something there for...
They were pulling out.
Right,
no,
exactly.
That's not
Friends,
careful. That's not
listeners,
careful.
Please
that
know.
is gambling.
Please know that
it doesn't work, people. It does not work. It doesn't work.
That is not a contraceptive. That is not a being
careful. This is coming from a parent.
Thank you.
And what? Side note, what bothers me so much these days is that people are like, oh, we used a condom. Oh, we did. No, you didn't. Condoms don't fail that much for the amount of people that say, oh,
I'm going to tell you what happened. What happened was, because I be falling victim to this all the time. Business out there. Okay, so, like the first time you're like, yeah, I'm going to use a condom. Second time, yeah, I'm going to use a condom. Third time, you'd be like, well, I feel like we know each other a little bit better now. I think we can...
I trust you.
I trust you. When was the last time you got tested? You ain't got nothing, do you? And then this whole dialogue happens. And then you break down that wall and you say, enter me raw, baby. I like you raw. And then
wow, this is going somewhere different. So Issa is our main character.
That's how they ended up pregnant.
Issa is our main
comfortable.
Issa is our main character.
You're welcome. The birds and the bees.
Issa being our main character. We meet her in the first season. And she is, our opening introduction to her is her being roasted by a class of middle school students, asking her why her hair like that, why you ain't married, like just a plethora of uncomfortable questions to be asked in your late 20s when you are already in that phase of life where you are questioning lots of decisions and what will be the next move. So that made her extremely uncomfortable, hence the name of the show, Insecure. And she is in a budding relationship with Lawrence, who is her long-term boyfriend, who unfortunately at that time has been unemployed for 2 years, who is basically on her couch all day because he appears to be suffering from depression from a failed business venture. He had an idea of an app that he wanted to create and it never really took off. And it seemed like he really had a hard time coping and getting past that. And so she's questioning whether she wants to continue that relationship going forward. And her best friend, Molly, she views Molly as killing it in life because she is liked by many. She doesn't seem as awkward as Issa feels about herself and has a career in law, a successful career in law. And then they also have two other best friends, Tiffany and Kelly, who make up their circle. I want to know, in your friend group, who are you? Are you the Molly, the Issa, the Tiffany, or the Kelly?
Clearly, after that last conversation, I'm Kelly. I have no filter. And I'm likely to harass somebody's son in public because it's just what I can do, because I can. That's me flirting.
And the comedic relief.
Yeah, right. That random person that just says something like, what? Y'all was thinking it. I just had to share. But yeah, that's me, Kelly.
I would say I am Issa. Just from a standpoint of, it may be taking some time for the career to take off. What else? The We Got Y'all whole thing. I felt like that has been like working for a nonprofit and just some of the different jobs that I've had just kind of go into the whole We Got Y'all thing, where there's like you're working for well-meaning white people, but they're extremely problematic, and just how to navigate that. Sometimes I feel like I can be awkward, even though I don't come off as awkward as Issa. On the inside, I feel like Issa, but on the outside, I'm very like cool, calm, and collected. But I can relate to a lot of her awkward inner thoughts and, the raps and things like that she used to do, which I hate that we didn't get a lot of that. I don't think we got any raps this fourth season. And so I really miss those things because it was just like, man, she's speaking to my soul right now. So Issa is me on the inside. And then just also, I'm not going to share that piece of it until we, I guess, get to the diagnosis part, as far as how I relate to her in that respect. So,
Issa Rae did say that we didn't get as many raps from Issa this season because she felt that Issa didn't have to spend as much time in the mirror talking to herself because she had experienced that growth that you talked about a little bit earlier in Kelly's. It's growth.
Yeah, and you have to do the hand with it.
Mm-hmm. The flower bomb. And so that is why we didn't get as many raps because Issa wasn't in that place where she had to speak to herself in that way as much anymore. And so she said that was her explanation of that. But to answer the question for myself, I feel that I have kind of gone through a transition because unfortunately, the first 2 seasons of Insecure, it was my life. I was going through. So the working with children, that being in that long-term relationship and being like, oh my God, I've got to get out of here. And then, but not really wanting to do it. And then doing things that would cause that relationship to end just because you're too afraid to break out of that relationship yourself and do that in a healthy way. On top of having a best friend who is killing it, who my best friend at the time was in law school. And I was watching it. I was like, oh my God, this is my life. And so rewatching it for this to prepare, it took me to a dark place. So, but I think that I have grown as well as Issa, but in a different way. I think more so now my personality might be a little bit more aligned with Molly because I am in that, like, I'm only doing what I feel like doing and I don't care what everybody else want to do because I'm doing what I want to do and I ain't wrong for doing what I want to do because it's what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that you pointed out that aspect of the best friend thing. I forgot about that. And so with Issa and the Molly dynamic, I do have that similar dynamic as well, where my best friend, who also graduated from A&T, was like business major and econ and all of that stuff and went on and like career took off and like continues to take off and, and just, for a very short time was like comparing like where she was in life, how much she was making versus how much I was making working at, We Got Y'all. It was just a very different thing that I've had to navigate within myself. And so that was definitely something that made Issa extremely relatable.
But y'all correct me if I'm wrong. So do we feel like the most important relationship that occurs on the show is between Molly and Issa?
Yeah, I can agree. I think it's important to also note, though, they're different relationships, too. And like they're different various friendships, situationships. And because those relationships actually is what impacts their actual friendship to each other as friends. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously relationships is like the element of this show and how those situations have and consequences have an impact on all of these relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Jovan, did you want to add to that?
So yeah, I was going to say that, those are the 2 main characters. And so those are the ones that I would like to focus on. But as Rosie talked about, the relationships that they have outside of one another impact their, like the main relationship that we're going to be focusing on. So like we can't talk about Issa and not talk about her relationship with Lawrence. We can't talk about Molly and not talk about her relationship with Andrew and Nim.
And Nim.
I mean, let's be real, because she has had several and thems, okay? And I think it's worth noting that she did have several of them. And like, what was going on? What was happening for that to happen? I think that says a lot and also is something that should be considered for diagnosis and prognosis, because that type of behavior can be an indicator of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So before we dig into the mental health piece of it, I just want to hear you guys' overall opinions of the show. Like, do you enjoy the show? What do you feel like its impact is on the culture? Because clearly we are all tuned in. We're all watching it. Everyone has an opinion. So I would like to hear what you guys' opinion is.
I love the show. I think this is comparable to what Living Single was for women in the 90s, in which I still appreciated being a millennial. That's definitely one of my favorite sitcoms. But I think this is comparable to what that was in the 90s. I think it shows what, friendships look like, what relationships look like, what careers can look like. It just touches on so much. And it's definitely opened my eyes and forced me to be like, maybe I do feel a way about this, and that maybe I need to work on this. For example, it might have been first season where Molly dated the guy at Enterprise. I can't remember his name. But that caused, a lot of their episodes caused a lot of huge discussion. And so basically what that kind of, it was the catalyst for a lot of discussion as it related to Black women not being as open to Black men who have had experiences with other men, and whether or not we kind of close off their ability to be, sexual people, or people that can, be sexually fluid and things like that. And just, does that look like homophobia, or does that look like, preference? And so it's just been a lot of discussion surrounding that. And so I appreciated Insecure for bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah. So I remember that character. His name is Jared. And I rocked with Jared. I can see why Molly actually liked him. He was a decent guy. And then that casually kind of came out. That was an experience for me. I was talking to this guy. So there's sometimes where I do feel like I'm a combination of Molly and Issa as far as the type of guys I've crossed paths with. I was like, wow, I feel very judged, but this is good. Because I had this guy that I was kind of, messing around with. We was kicking it. I was single, whatever. And, he was an interesting guy when I met him. He had tattoos and he had locks and he just had this pretty smile. But he also he had his toes painted white or black. And just either white or black.
Was this during
No, I vividly recall it was white because black was normal. I said, if it was black, people do that. That's okay, rock star. But it was white.
It was white.
Okay.
White. And me being the type of person I am, I was just like, wow, look at you. I like
He's
that.
So expressive.
And so I started wearing white toes too. I was like, this is it. Let me get into this look. So one day we watching a basketball game together. We just chilling. And he was like, the basketball league is so full of queens. I said, what? He was like, they're just so full of queens. I said, how you know? He was like, I mean, I'm a part of the community. I know about it. I was like, what? And
you said that man said, I know my people.
He said he knows his people. And I was just like, I clutched my pearls. And I said, oh. So what made me upset in that situation with him was you could have at least just told me straight up, But my friends was like, nah, sis, you should have known from them white toes. I said, listen, I just wanted to let him be expressive in his own way. There was nothing wrong with it. It was his swag, And so that's my story about my version of a Jared. But I love him. I think they're amazing people. But he was definitely bisexual. He was definitely bisexual. And that was a really hard conversation to have because, within my 20s, like within my lifetime, that had never happened to me. And so my initial thought process was like, yo, I need to go get tested, blah, blah, blah. So that stereotypical thinking, and then feeling upset at myself for not being able to realize or know this. But then after a while, it's just kind of like, well, it is what it is. And if we were to be in a really serious relationship and I was really into him in that way, maybe I would have been okay with pursuing the relationship.
Yeah. So was that the straw that broke the camel's back with that situationship, or like were you guys able to like move on?
No,
I don't think it was so much of him being bisexual as it was that he was just lame.
No, it was layers. It was layers. And then when I found that he did cocaine.
That's the guy. I remember him. Yes,
I remember him.
That's why I said, was this grad school? Because he was starting to sound awfully familiar.
I didn't want to put all this business out, so I tried to just say...
I can't. Okay. It connects. I mean, this is my life story. I'm going to write a book, a tell-all. Stay tuned. I forgot the question.
So, guys, me too. I'm sorry. I can't keep us on track here. Is there anybody who within the show, I definitely think we were going in a different direction, but it's gone now. So is there anybody in the show who you felt like was diagnosable? Because I think it is pretty important to know, and I am glad that we're doing this show because not everyone necessarily has a full-blown diagnosis, but that does not necessarily mean that they could not benefit from any therapy, be it short-term, long-term, whatever it is that fits their situation. Couples, just to improve communication, relationships, or anything like that. We see that Molly goes to therapy as well. As much as she had a whole stank-ass attitude about somebody saying that she should go, but it ended up benefiting her, as we saw in the show. But is there anybody, aside, of course, from Common's Houston brother Nathan, because they talk just alike to me, who is revealed as being bipolar? Is there anybody else who you felt like was diagnosable in the show?
I feel like Lawrence is definitely the next diagnosable as far as a depression. What were your thoughts, Jovan?
Oh, I was going to give Molly major depressive disorder.
Oh, yeah? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Expound, please.
So we know, like you guys talked about in the previous episode, that, that this book that we use, the DSM, is, based off of white supremacist, ideals and things like that. And so that can, cause some challenges when it comes to diagnosing Black people and people of color. And so, or people that just don't identify as white males. And so when I look at Molly, and I also did a presentation on depression in Black women in grad school, and we called it Sisters with Sadness. And knowing that depression does not look the same for Black women as what you would typically see as far as like, oh, a white woman that's, can't get out of bed and, can't do anything and, not showering, not doing this, not doing that, which a lot of times in our culture is like, we don't have time to be sad. We don't have time to be in the bed all day. Because we have things to do. And so I think with her, we see a lot of, while she is successful as a lawyer and things like that, I think she busies herself with her career so she won't have to deal with the emotions that she's stuffing down deep. And so as I'm looking at the diagnostic criteria for depression, it says depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by subjective report, feels sad, empty, hopeless. So I feel like with her, we saw a lot of emptiness, hopelessness, and then it also made note of the irritability. It says that in children and adolescents, it could be irritable mood. And I would dare to say that even in Black women, where we see a lot of irritability, can indicate depression and anxiety. And so while, it's easy to get that reputation of being an angry Black woman, we see that Molly often is put into that category. What I see is irritability, which is a symptom of something that has not been diagnosed or addressed. Also, just her no longer having interest in Issa. I think that's another thing. So, with depression, there's usually some diminished interest in things that you used to do for fun or things that you used to enjoy. I think her deciding to kind of part ways with her friend might indicate that as well. What else? Feelings of worthlessness or excessive inappropriate guilt. But yeah, I think with the worthlessness, we see, I think with a lot of people, when they have like perfectionist tendencies, things like that, it comes from a sense of not feeling like they're worthy. And so where she feels like she has to be the best at things, we saw her like kind of trip up and do some things that were pretty messed up with coworkers. So yeah, I think there's a lot there for her. And just not feeling, how can I say this? Just overall like a very pessimistic view of life would lend itself to her being impacted by depression. And then I would also say that she's being impacted at work with this, as well as her personal relationships, whether it be, her platonic friendship with Issa or her many relationships with the men in her life.
And definitely where you mentioned those feelings of perfectionism, I thought that definitely came out in her view of what a relationship or what marriage was, because there are many people, especially people who have grew up with their parents being together and in the same house, where if they find out that there are any issues within that marriage, that deeply impacts them, like they were the one who were done wrong in that relationship. And so it did almost make it seem like she felt she was going through the process of grief, like she was the one who got cheated on. And it kind of tainted her view of what marriage was. Because earlier she had said, like, are there any people who are married like my parents anymore? And then the very next episode, we find out that way a long time ago, it sounds like her aunties being gossipy, we find out that her dad had at one point cheated on her mom, but they were able to overcome that, work that through in their relationship, and continue to stay together, be in a happy, healthy relationship, it does appear. But that messed her up so much that it tainted her view of what marriage is. It kind of added to her distrust in relationships, as well as impacted her relationship with her father. And so I think if it's not perfect, she doesn't want to interact with it, but it's only from her view of perfection, because her mother did not appear to be unhappy in their relationship. So for their mother, they could be in a perfect place where they are now. But because that infidelity happened however many years ago, in Molly's eyes, her idea of perfection, it was no longer perfect. And so it was no longer acceptable.
I think her experience with being with a married man also tainted her idea of marriage, because the whole thing with Dro and Candace, her trying to be in this platonic relationship with Dro and just be okay with having sex with him, even though he was happily married to a friend of theirs, Candace, that they were friends. And so she was in this love triangle at some point as well. And so I think where she had that question of, do people even have marriages like my mom and dad anymore, came from this experience of being in a love triangle between her childhood friend Dro and their friend, or her friend Candace. And so it was just, talk about somebody being messy, and so again, it's like clutches pearls, like to Javon's point, it's like, how dare you tell me that I'm messy when you were in like a legit love triangle in a swingers relationship, yet I'm messy. And the reason why Molly chose to be in that relationship, not to give to that couple, but out of selfishness, because she wanted the sex that bad. And
I think also to your point though, Rosie, with that Dro relationship, it was kind of murky waters because we didn't know if Candace truly knew about it until I guess later on. And so it was kind of like he presented it like, okay, yes, we have this open marriage and like we can do what we want to do. But then it was like, but do you really? And so because that wasn't really confirmed, it was just kind of like, it just looked like a normal, like, okay, I'm cheating on my wife and here you are. And I think there's nothing wrong with having an open relationship. There's nothing wrong with polyamorous relationships as long as that's what you want. And so I think a lot of times women in particular end up settling because we don't want to let a relationship go. So she was making up this relationship with Dro in her head that it was going to be something more than what it was. And he's a married man. And that's just the way that he chose to live it. Like we have our fun, whatever else, but I'm going home to my wife.
Right.
And she was trying to make it more than what it was. And that's where she went wrong. So it's like, if you're going to be in an open relationship, then understand that that person is, you know, doing their thing with their wife and you're just kind of on the side and you guys have fun.
But there's
an added bonus.
Right. And there's rules to this type of those types of relationships. And that is something that I learned, especially like with the LGBTQ community, and their sub-communities, is that you technically, like, as far as polygamy and things of that nature, they actually engage in that, but you have to have consent. You have to, everyone involved has to be made aware of who is involved. And, you know, that you want to make sure that the person doesn't feel like, oh, I didn't know what this was happening. There's another word for it. It's something monogamy. I'm blanking on the word right now, but I'm gonna find it. But what I like about going back to a question that you asked about, like, you know, this representation of Black people, and is this a good show for us? And I mean, obviously, just talking about Molly, this is clearly a good show for us because I mean, there's so many layers and facets in how each person is presented. But then also their Black reality, because going back to Issa and working at We Got Y'all, I mean, how many of us have dealt with, you know, the microaggressions in the workplace? And, you know, and so even that, like speaking in on that experience, or, you know, trying to do and develop things for your community and the red taping that happened, the redlining that happens. But speaking of redlining, the gentrification that's also happening. We're present with it as it's happening in LA. And I also appreciate that because it's telling a story about what's happening. Because sometimes we get so caught up in being in the city that we're in that we see it on gentrification only happening within our city. But this is nationwide. And to see how it's impacting people in LA and the Black lives in LA was another dynamic that was added to this. So I think this is just an amazing show for Black young people to see all of our issues current in a show. Okay,
and I think that Issa's growth, along with all of the things that you mentioned that are going on, kind of allow her to, or her character rather, to highlight all of those different things. Being in a place first where you initially had all this passion and you wanted to do for your community and do so by working for a nonprofit. But then recognizing like, no, this nonprofit could potentially be doing more harm than it is good. And she learned that and throughout the show and the different things that she was doing, and then contacting those schools who had canceled with them because they're like, yeah, no, you know, your logo racist, right? And so then finding what is it that I want to do? Okay, well, I can start, you know, driving lifts and doing these different things and being... There's that part of it where you have to make your money, and then really taking a step back and looking at, okay, like, these are the things that I want to do. This is what's important to me, is really showcasing the beauty that already exists in my community and doing something awesome, doing something dope for Black people with them actually being involved. It not necessarily needed to be coming from the outside and someone showcasing it to us. No, we have everything that we need. And so we want to showcase that. And that was what came of her block party. And one quote that did stick out that I did talk about before was when Molly said, well, maybe the who you are right now and who I am right now It's not really a quote because I can't remember exactly what she said, but basically wasn't going together. And it did seem like Issa had made a lot of growth. Again, she's not even rapping in the mirror as much because she's happy with who she's seeing in the mirror a lot more now. And so she's making all this growth. And it almost seemed like for a minute there, Molly was kind of stuck and she wasn't making that same growth that Issa is making. And we kind of see that kind of play out. Like a lot of her stuff is repetitive. And Issa pointed that out to her. And that kind of was what, drove so much tension between her and Molly was like, you do the same stuff in your relationships over and over and over. You're repeating these cycles, but you can't see that it's you. We see that being with the relationship that she had with Dro. He was very open and honest with her. We come to find out later on, she honestly asked, like, does Candace know about me? He said, yeah. She saw Candace at the dinner party, and Candace was cracking jokes with her and, sitting at the bar, like she didn't have a problem. They seemed like they knew exactly where they were in their relationship. And Molly wasn't mature enough to really enter it because she wanted a boyfriend. This woman husband can't be your boyfriend, whether they in an open marriage or not. That's her husband. They just happen to be in an open marriage. That can't be your boyfriend. So she has just certain things, certain very structurally that she sees things, very rigid way of seeing things. And if it doesn't fit, then she kind of like pouts and throws tantrums. And I would like we could talk later in the prognosis about where you see that going. But did y'all want to speak a little bit more to Issa's growth and how y'all see her progressing throughout the show from where she started to where she is now?
With this growth, are we also going to talk about if she had a diagnosis, or do you want me to wait?
Sure, throw that on in there, girl.
Okay. So to what I was basically saying earlier, as far as like me relating to Issa, just with her being a normal young adult with figuring it out. A lot of times in our society, we put a lot of pressure on people that are 18 to, know what they want to do for the rest of their lives. And what I appreciate about millennials is just like, we're like, nah, fuck that. Like we have time to figure it out. And we may likely go through multiple career choices throughout our lives, and that we don't typically stay in one place for, longer than a couple of years. And so, which makes us a little different than previous generations. And so I think Issa is kind of going in that those footsteps are in that direction, where it's taking her a while to just kind of figure out what she wants to do next. And so We Got Y'all is just like it was a stepping stone. It was her to figure out, okay, it's what I don't want to do. So I always say, like, from a career standpoint, whether you do something or not, you're going to figure out whether you like to do it or you don't like to do it. That can be like the purpose of whatever experience that you do have. And so with that, it was just like, yeah, I like this community work and whatever else, but not for this company. And then she was able to find a job that she, could tolerate, or, that brought some, income in with being a property manager. We also saw her going from this what was at that moment, that dead end relationship where she was the one going to work every day. And, she was working harder than he was in that relationship. And so they eventually broke up. Even though she did, do the whole cheating thing and whatever else, but that's a different conversation. I think that they both had some things that they had to work on. And so they were able to kind of flourish apart. Then we saw her beginning to show this interest. They went to, Coachella, all of that. I feel like that was like the thing that inspired like the initial block party idea. Was just like, man, we could get, all Black people involved with something like this and do it ourselves and showcase, our neighborhoods and our businesses and things like that. So that was like the catalyst for her to go ahead and do something on her own. And she had no idea how she was going to do it, but she figured it out. She networked. She, did her Lyft thing. She did the property management thing. She did a lot of work to get to where she was in this last episode. And so we did see her do a lot of growing. But I would say just overall, if I had to diagnose Issa with anything, it would be anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. And
finger snaps.
And that's where I relate to her on. I deal with anxiety. And so I think that can also play into the awkwardness. Where it's just like you're spending so much time in your head, spinning your wheels, wondering like, what should I do? How should I present? You know, how did that person take what I said? You know, what do I have to do tomorrow? Just those constant ruminating thoughts that happen with her, and her like planning these scenarios out that may never come to fruition. But she has this whole made up land in her head about what could potentially go wrong. And so with the criteria of generalized anxiety disorder, restlessness or feeling keyed up or on edge, she's definitely on edge 90% of the time. We don't know about her sleep or anything like that. She definitely has some trouble concentrating with her constant, even when she was doing the raps and things like that. Sometimes those might come out of nowhere while she's, you know, at home or in the car. And even we saw it in this last season where she thought about calling Molly to tell her something or to, you know, kind of get some advice. And then she like immediately like went to this thought of like Molly yelling at her and not responding in the way that she thought it would. We do see some irritability coming about with her as well, with just her kind of popping back at Molly, but not as much as Molly, I would say, with her irritability. I think hers was more so in reaction to, in her reaction to Molly. So, but yeah, that's my diagnosis of Issa. What do you guys think?
I definitely agree. And I definitely feel like that kind of comes in with her relationship with Daniel, because I have a soft place in my heart for Daniel. That boy just wanted to love and freak on that girl. That's all that he wanted, was to love her and have sex with her. And she was just like, no. Sometimes I want to do that with you. Sometimes I don't. I want to come stay at your house, but I don't want a relationship. I want you to fix all my problems, but no, I'm not depending on you. And so I think that was the manifestation of all of that worry of everything in life adding up to a certain place. And I felt like Daniel didn't always fit into that well for her. And so they had a kind of a negative fallout from their relationship. The one thing I did not like, though, was the generalization that Black women did not like to give head, because that was made in that episode where Daniel nutted in her eye. And I was like, I just wanted to hear y'all's opinion on it real quick.
I just don't understand how you could be that neglectful and just end up having cum in your eye. Like, you had to be moving really fast for something that I just don't.
Don't you control where I feel like you should
you should be able, you should hold it. You'd be like, no, we ain't gonna let this happen. On my shirt, maybe my hair, but never my eye.
I was trying to ignore the messages. Oh goodness. I think that it was another good moment to touch on some things that may be taboo within our community, which I didn't know that was still a taboo thing, I guess. I thought, and sometimes it just makes me realize how behind Hollywood is with certain things sometimes, where it's just kind of like, well, we were on that about 10 years ago. And so just with the dialogue of certain things, so whether it's like natural hair or sex or whatever, it's just kind of like, and I also have to keep in mind, like we went to a HBCU and it was certain conversations and things like that we were having that maybe other people might not have been having at that time. And so I was just kind of like, wait, is this still a thing? Like, I understand like in high school that we weren't really saying that these things were happening, but in our 20s and 30s, like, is that really a thing?
Just felt like it was an unnecessary generalization that was made. And as much as poignant and as spot on as the show is for Black culture, I was disappointed. It had, how dare you suggest that I don't like engaging in all parts of sexual activities.
I mean, and I'm sure there are a small set of people that don't believe in that and maybe have not been exposed to that. But it was just kind of like, is this really a thing in 2000?
That
whatever?
Small set is not in my friend group. I don't know none of them people.
Well, I have to go back to the quotables as far as I can't believe I forgot about Zaddy. Zaddy? Tasha, the bank teller, and her calling Lawrence Zaddy. That was like, and she
That's
was
the
just
first
like,
time you heard Zaddy?
Yes. Me and Evan looked at each other like, wow, that's so, I like that. Yeah.
You're a little bougie now. It's out here.
Wow.
It's a little old too. It's been around.
Wow. Okay, well, that was my first time hearing Zaddy, and that was my quotable. But I think maybe I should speak for myself instead of saying we, but Tasha I thought she was going to be the Condola.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she was going to be the Condola. And I also feel like we can't forget about Tiffany and her postpartum depression as well. Yeah. So, I mean, damn.
So then let's go ahead and hit a prognosis for each of our characters. So for Issa, we are saying generalized anxiety disorder. That is what the diagnosis that we would give her. What type therapies or anything would you use with her? What issues would you want to address in therapy if she was your client, this character was your client? And how well do you see her on her pathway to healing?
I'm so person-centered, and because Issa is so internally driven, I would use person-centered with her. She has the tools and the ability to fix most of her problems. She's aware of most of them. So really, it's just a matter of her having to do that internal work. So I would use person-centered therapy with her and using that approach.
I would use, I'm really getting more into like mindfulness and things like that in CBT. So there's also like a therapeutic approach that's called like mindfulness or mindful CBT. Cognitive behavioral therapy for those that aren't familiar with CBT. So basically working with her to address her cognitive distortion. So just those thoughts that may not be true, that she's gone on to believe are true and drive her anxiety. I would also work with her with creating healthy boundaries with everyone in her life. I would also assist her with deep breathing exercises. I like the fact that she was already into yoga, and her and Molly, were having those self-care Sundays. So I would really want her, with or without Molly, I would really want her to continue that and just come to her as a, strength base to say like, you were doing yoga. Maybe that's something that we can incorporate again because it seemed to, be something that really worked for you in the past. So that would be my treatment for her, as well as like talk therapy and doing a lot of processing.
Okay. Molly, we're saying has major depressive disorder. Same question, but for Molly, go. Prognosis.
What do you think, Courtney?
For Molly, I think that she is already in therapy. I think it was a whole entire process to get her to go. It took a couple episodes for her to really wrap her mind around it and then find someone who was a good fit for her. And then she is still working on opening up. So in the therapy that she is receiving now, I think that she needed that time to build that trust because of her issues with perfectionism. And she did not like lifting that veil and somebody seeing that she wasn't perfect. I think that now with her, just now like really getting comfortable with her therapist, the one episode she was like, well, okay, read me then. So she is finally accepting of hearing that. And I think that was very skillful of the counselor that they wrote into her show, because when you're dealing with clients who are resistant in that way, you have to allow them to build that trust. And so now that she's still not being completely honest with her, but she is at least now opening up a little bit so that some work can be done. And so I would, following along with her counsel that she has now, is give her actual more homework assignments, make her do stuff so that she can feel some type of success in doing something that is actually beneficial for her in her life. And so with that building that trust, I do think once she finally does get to that place that actual work can be done and she can see some actual growth and really start healing from the different things that she has going on. Because I do feel like her therapist has been challenging her more. And so now I think they can actually start to get into some work. Rosie, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you. I think that the therapist was probably going to have to start getting more activities, active things for her to do. I know that we're probably going to revisit a lot of those holding grudges, those types of behaviors after the breakup with Andrew, and also kind of maybe the breakup with Issa. So kind of preparing, just kind of bracing for the difference, that's the different moods and feelings and emotions that she's going to have after that, because Andrew and Issa made up a good portion of her world for a little bit. And so what is that going to look like now that they're kind of gone in a way or separated? So that's also something that I would kind of put in the back of my head, kind of put on a side to maybe work and consider working
on. For Molly, I would like to add that I think I would want her to be in therapy consistently. That would be my main thing, and that comes along with the trust and all of that, but holding her accountable to weekly sessions. So this like peeking in, peeking out that she's been doing is not going to be helpful and is not going to lead to her success. And so I would really kind of initiate boundaries with her to say like, hey, if you're going to be involved in your treatment, then this is what it looks like. And so just basically working on some treatment goals, what she would want to see. Also working on maybe some role playing with her to talk about, how she could have handled these different scenarios and relationship challenges in a different way that could potentially get her a different result. Working on different ways to communicate because her communication skills are just messed up. And to me, she also picks and chooses who she decides to communicate with. Mm-hmm. And so it's like certain things that I was just like, Molly wasn't necessarily wrong for that. Like the way that she responded to Andrew's brother in the pool, I was kind of like, well,
fuck you, Victor.
For me, it was just kind of like, yeah, she could have said that in a different way and handled that in a different way. But who am I to tell a Black woman how she should respond to someone minimizing and negating her experience as a Black woman and experiencing racism? So to me, she has those skills, but working on translating those skills across all boards, because we see she uses some communication skills in work and she's wanting to be more liked and things like that at work. So she's working on in the workspace, but I really want her to begin to work on those skills in her personal life and to help her develop some sense of insight, because to me, it's just like she's in her perfectionist bubble and doesn't really see how she could be doing wrong within her relationships. So that comes with that relationship as well, because if you have a relationship with your therapist, they'll be able to call you on your shit and be like, hey, you fucking up like this. Let me show you the ways in which you handled this and how you think that could impact you. So.
Mm-hmm. Definitely agree with the insight in the possible role playing, because a lot of times she doesn't think that she's wrong in her interactions. And then sometimes really she isn't. While she also is messy, Issa's stuff for a while was messy. If that's the role that you continuously play, is being messy and being a user, because those first couple of seasons, that's what Issa really, really was doing. She was using the people in her lives, and she was taking Molly for granted a lot and saying, let's get together and girl, order whatever you want because you paying for it. Like she was doing that a lot and showing up to Daniel's house and I'm just stay with you, but we ain't gonna do nothing. She was doing that. And so sometimes she wasn't wrong in what she said. It might have been how she said it that is causing her the issues. I am hopeful though, as though we did in this season with her and with Molly and Issa meeting up and finally having conversation. We don't know what happens or what's said in that kind of conversation, but it does look very in depth because there's lots of hand movement and shoulder shrugging and leaning in. So I'm hoping just by reading the body language that is something that helps bring them closer, and that Molly is really actually ready to do the work, because her therapist challenged her and was like, are you ready to do the work to make this situation better? And we didn't get an answer from Molly. I think it cut to a different scene. But for a lot of the relationship between Issa and Molly, Issa is the one who starts it. She's the one who engages that making up. She's, bitch, you still mad? And then they go from there. And Molly never really does the work of healing those relationships with people. She either just goes along like, okay, you was wrong, but okay, let's keep going. Or that person is no longer around at all. She says her piece and then that's it. But there's not a lot of healing relationships. And you can heal a relationship and separate from it. That can happen at the same time, but that's not something that she has been able to really do, even with the relationship with her father yet. So hopefully all of that will come together. Rosie, you mentioned earlier about Tiffany and her postpartum depression. Another issue that I don't feel like is really explored enough. And so kudos to the show and being brave enough to really talk about it and show what that could potentially look like for us, for people who don't know. Did you want to speak to that, Rosie?
Yeah, I don't have personal experience with postpartum depression, but I've had a lot of friends who like shown symptoms and have expressed having it. And the behaviors that she had, like at the beginning, you know, I'm thinking, oh, this is Tiffany being funny. But, you know, it did start to look like, oh, wow, there might be something here. And I think one of the things that really stood out was the fact that Tiffany, you wouldn't really expect it from Tiffany because Tiffany seems to be that character that has it all together almost. And then so for her to act weird like this, like she did for this season, I don't want to say weird, but just not like herself, you know, primped and pressed and pretty and on, you know, on it. She always had a comeback. She was there. She was ready. But she was different. Her energy was definitely different. And I feel as if, again, we do need to show that. And it's like, what does postpartum really look like? Like, you know, like, are we just showing it as like extreme bouts of depression or types of behaviors? But sometimes it could be very subtle. So I don't know. I think it's still a thing that our society is trying to wrap its brain around, that women after pregnancy struggle with depression, and we do need to continue to have conversation around it.
I also think it's important to note that, you know, in a regular, like for us, regular Black women, that expressing that we have postpartum depression or what's potentially happening with us, whether those are like thoughts of like considering harming your child or considering harming yourself, or, you know, involvement with social services, CPS involvement, things like that, potentially, you know, being afraid that your child might be taken away from you if you're saying, you know what, my child was crying and I just wanted to, you know, smother them with a pillow, or, you know, whatever those things are. And so just having this fear of my child will be taken away from me, or I will be institutionalized, or whatever those harsh consequences will be, along with just the expectation of that, you know, Black women are strong and we're supposed to, you know, overcome everything. So those are important things to capture when we're talking about postpartum depression or any diagnosis, really. But I think especially with that, you know, where we have like an extreme respect for the matriarchs in our family and just expecting for them to be really strong and able to take on the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think that's just she was the interesting person to end up being pregnant in the first place, you know, and then just her, you know, going through the journey of her going, you know, getting pregnant and, you know, just her high energy at the beginning to where she is now at the end, you know, really just showed like this shift and change in her. Cause I mean, she was really like happy and excited for the pregnancy. And then afterwards, she's like, do you think my baby's pretty? Would you tell me if my baby was ugly? You know, and I think these are all things that Black mothers experience. But, you know, like you said, we just haven't normalized having those conversations, especially because we have this stigma that we're supposed to be strong.
I agree. Well, this has been good, though. I've enjoyed the conversation with you guys.
Yeah, for sure. I wish we could really go deeper into some of the other relationships from Molly and even Issa. Like, because we didn't even talk about Quentin as much. Quentin was the law person. Remember him? He's in the law firm with her.
Oh, the one that was not Chicago. Necessarily her type.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And even Issa having the big boy, the TSA guy.
That whole situation. What was that? What was that sound?
Honey.
What was the sound?
I don't know.
I can't remember the sound that he made, but that was so cute when Lawrence acted like he was going to leave her and made that sound.
Oh, honey, I thought that was so... I was like, he's not going to do that to her. Is he really going to do that? I was so suckered into it. I just knew that was the end of their night. But yeah, I think it was interesting. I was watching something, I can't remember, but they were just basically saying that we need to normalize big boys getting love too in sex scenes. I thought that was interesting. What do you think?
I agree. I liked that we saw him, and when they showed his little butt, I was just like, okay.
And so the butt button or something he said. What he say about
push my butt button or whatever. So some people I know I know that some people were questioning, was he talking about his anus, putting her finger in his anus, or just pushing his butt so he could feel a different feeling. So I'm not sure where they were going with that, but I guess it was a real moment. But I think it is important to note, just kind of moving forward with Insecure. I did see some conversation with a guy that is considered big or whatever. And he talked about how he did not while he was happy to see that it was someone that was in there that was bigger. I don't know what men prefer to be called, if they're larger or whatever, but that not being used as a comedic relief. And so while we did see him in a sex scene, much like the sex scene from Waiting to Exhale, where we had the big man with, I can't remember her name. Was her name Robin in there? I don't remember her name. But where they had sex, and it was just this very awkward comedic moment. And it was just well, why can't big people just be in love and have sex like the rest of us have sex without it being a joke behind it? And so that's one critique that I could give Insecure, is just that, even when it comes to Kelly, we want to see Kelly getting love too. We want to see Kelly being more than just the comedic relief. We want to see, even though we don't have to see, TSA or whoever he was, or security, we want to see more of it without them being the comedic relief or always being there and that's being their sole purpose.
Yeah, I agree. When you say it like that, I guess I never initially thought, that of it being a negative, but I can see that as well now that you broke it down in that way, that we don't want to have that image of them just being a comedic relief, and kind of goes back to how Black people were introduced into film in the first place, that we were that comedic relief with the big mouths and, dopey face and eyes and stuff. So Courtney.
Yeah, I think this season was the first time that they kind of got away from Kelly and Tiffany being real stereotypical, because their characters, while supportive and while two very main characters in their friend group, both of them were just big stereotypes. Kelly was often drunk, cracking jokes, and being real vulgar and loud. And Tiffany was very stereotypical, and she went to an Ivy League. She, always had her hair and stuff together. And so they gave them a lot more depth this season. They made Tiffany just a little bit less shallow and being able to understand different points of view actually this season. And so I appreciated them two getting actual shine, where even the actress Amanda Seales saying, going through the season, she purposefully let her nails be undone and didn't get them repainted because she wanted to show the progression that was getting really rough for Tiffany. And something, because her character is always, everything has to be together, hair always has to be done. Like, she purposefully, her hair was unkept, her nails were getting longer. And then seeing Kelly being really worried about her friend and doing whatever it was that she needed to make that happen. I just liked being and really upset and hurt when she didn't get to plan the baby shower and really seeing what that looks like between friends. I really appreciated them being fuller characters and not just the set stereotypes that they were, that offered, their structured whatever it was they was given in their scenes. So I appreciated that from both of them this season. So I really, just in general, overall, appreciated the show. It talked a lot about it gave a new viewpoint into different issues that don't always get talked about, as far as it being dating, male sexuality, males being able, Lawrence handling the situation of him being cheated on and what that looks like for a Black man. Sexuality in general with like we talked about earlier, the oral sex. Friendships, what adult friendships look like, because making friends as a younger is very easy. It's very hard to make friends as an adult. And so we see Issa make friendships with, again, Condoleezza Rice, even though that doesn't end well. We see what that process looks like. And so I just really appreciated this show for it showing us in all lights and not just because to me, it's more of a dramedy, because yes, there's this funny parts, but it offers all lenses and all viewpoints within the show. And being able to see women of color be sexual, be passionate, be in relationships, be in friendships, and what that looks like for all of us. Any other burning desires, anything that you wanted to say about the show before we wrap up?
I think you did great describing it. Good job.
I agree. This has been good.
All right, then. Thanks for kicking it with us this week on DSM, Diagnosing Sitcoms and Movies. If you think that we're all right, just all right, you think we don't really know what we talk about, or you absolutely love us, please let us know, because we are counselors and we actually care about what you have to say. Until next time, peace.
Okay, bye.